All right, so hello everyone and welcome. My name is Jan Bleha and I would like to welcome all of you here on behalf of the organizers, and also I would like to welcome the people who watch us remotely. First, I would like to thank people from kiwi.com, Kentico and Ysoft for making this thing happen. So thank you guys. It's nice that we can still finally meet after such a long time. And second, we are going to be using Slido for questions. So please log into Slido, use the hashtag future of work, and ask anything these leaders of the Brno major IT companies. You can also use their individuals, so you can use their first name when you are asking someone specific. Also, we are going to be taking pictures, so please keep smiling. And finally, at about 7:15, we will have a short break and we will end our official program at 8. But the whole venue is booked until about 10, so you can stay here for networking. And the whole event is going to be moderated by Ken. So I would like to welcome Ken and give him my place.
Thank you, Hansa.
Welcome, Ken.
Thank you very much, Hansa, and I'd like to offer you all a very warm welcome. Apologies for the change of venue, but the weather has been very unpredictable, especially this week, so we decided to change the venue to indoors here at the Impact Hub. Before we begin and before I introduce our panel, the topic today is about the future of work, the future of working environment. I believe it's a very relevant and topical conversation. So I expect a good discussion here this evening. And as Hansa said, please submit any questions to slido.com. And the hashtag is the future of work. And we'll put that on the screen in a moment. Our panel. Beside me here, this gentleman, we have the founder and CEO of Ysoft, Mr. Václav Muchna. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Can everyone give him a warm welcome?
Hello.
As some or most of you may know, Ysoft provide a variety of intelligent enterprise office solutions that help build smart business that enables employees to be more creative and more productive.
That sounds very American.
Next, sitting beside him, we have a gentleman from Kentico, and I'm going to try my best to pronounce his name correctly. It's Zbyšek Němec. Right. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The VP of Engineering for Kentico. Kentico are a global player in the field of CMS, which is Content Management Systems.
Right.
Correct? Okay. Zbyšek has contributed enormously to Kentico, from what I hear, especially their current direction. And it's primarily employee autonomy and accountability based. And that's paired with all aspects of customer first care, I understand. So
perfectly correct.
Last but definitely not least, we have David Pavlík, who is representing kiwi.com. David is the Chief Information Officer at kiwi.com. And if anyone is unfamiliar with kiwi.com, kiwi.com are a travel tech company that essentially pioneered the idea of virtual interlining. What that essentially means is they helped, or pioneered rather, connecting up non-cooperating airlines. So we have 3 Czech companies and global companies at this stage, and we're very, very pleased to have everyone here. David, I believe, came back from Silicon Valley back in 2018 to take charge of kiwi.com's IT strategy and internal processes. His experience with SpaceX, Microsoft, and Netflix speaks for itself. So a round of applause for David, please. Thank you. As Bob Dylan once sang, the times they are a-changing. And that's what we're going to be discussing this evening. We have questions, a couple of questions pre-prepared, but I invite you guys and our listeners at home to submit any questions to the panel. If you are submitting a question specifically to one of the panel members, perhaps mention Ysoft or Kentico or kiwi.com. Okay? Gentlemen, are you ready to answer some questions? All right. Let's start with the first question on the list. And it's an open question, and I'll just read the question for you. Are the days of putting thousands of employees under the same roof a thing of the past? Will we see a decline in the importance of the central office? Who wants to start?
I'll take care of it. I think we will see decline, but I don't think that the world in its past has ever seen dramatic changes like you go from total black to total white, from 0 to 1. The world is not binary, so I think that we will certainly see significantly more home office, but I also think that a lot of people on home office experience that if you don't have the right equipment at home, and what I mean by right equipment is dedicated room, and if you have children and everyone is at home, I still remember many people were coming to the office during COVID saying like, I can't work from home. It's impossible. And then you see, you know, if there are more important meetings, you still see that people want to do it. We just did yesterday a very important strategic meeting about architecture. And people, we had like every day, it was like 5-6 hours meeting. And people volunteered that they want to do it. They came from Prague actually, and they volunteered that they want to do it in the office. So I think that what we are going to see is significantly more home office, that companies were pretty much ready for that. They were discussing it, but they were afraid what will happen. That was our case. Like, what will happen if we do it in scale? We were forced into that. We've seen, okay, it's actually working, no problems. So I think that we'll see more remote work, but I think that the central office still will remain important for the future.
Gentlemen, do you have anything to add on that question?
I would add one thing. I agree with that, and what I expect about the one roof or the roles of the offices. I guess what's happening under this one roof will change. It's that we can still may have there 1,000 people or even more, but how we work, how we are organized, what are we actually doing in the central office, what is the role of it, that will change for sure from my perspective. And that's actually something that we are discussing a lot at kiwi.com as we are planning our move to Zbrojovka or Nová Zbrojovka in Brno. We are discussing a lot how we want to work there. We basically don't want to just lift and shift to this new place, but we want to kind of lift it and figure out what is the most effective setup for the future. And the other point I would like to make here is the fact that office workers, engineers, marketers, or this kind of office roles started to work from the home office. That was kind of natural, I would say, expectation. But the revolution that, yeah, that's one of the idea we had for the new Zbrojovka. So. That's our. That's your new office, right? That's our management team. Yeah. Oh no, this is the opening party of Zbrojovka. But the other point what I wanted to offer here is what I'm really looking forward to is once we figure out how we can basically make remote friendly the manufacturing work. Like think about like companies, I don't know, like Tesla or something that actually need to manufacture cars. Can we distribute this? Can this be kind of happening in multiple places? Can we see their migration of workers? I guess that's the next big thing for the remote work. For us, working from home, I agree with Václav. As long as you have a productive environment, that's pretty much the basic, but then the processes around it, how you organize it, that's the second part.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with gentlemen in the panel. Maybe one more thing we haven't mentioned yet, and I believe it's strongly connected with the office, with the building itself, is maybe the social aspect. Because for us in Kentico, it's still the place where we can all meet together, when we can socialize, we can have these coffees, discussions, or discuss, for example, the architecture by the board and draw it physically. So it's really important for us, I believe.
And it's, you know, a lot of people remain at their jobs and place of employment because of their colleagues and their friends, and they meet them in a central office environment. Mm-hmm. So I suppose that employer value proposition element is very important as well.
To add to this, a couple of years ago, I had a pleasure to be managing director of our American operation, and I used to fly. Why pleasure? Because I used to fly to US every month twice, and then 4 times around the world on top of this. It was a very interesting period of my life. But the reason why I'm saying that is, why did I need to go to the office? And the reason was, I mean, most of the things you do remotely. I mean, in the US, it's phone. Everything is done by the phone, and people are working remotely. You have employees pretty much scattered all around the states. So why did I need to go to the office? For me, and it's the social aspect. It's the grassroots. When you are in the office, you can listen to the employees, what they are talking about. Are they bothered by something? What's on their mind? Maybe their private situation, maybe company situation, and they would not share these things on an internet call. But they may share you. They may share them when you are together. So I was thinking like less traveling, and in one sense I'm saying yes, less traveling. Sorry, Kiwi. Was business traveling. But on the other hand, I verified that this like social type of interactions are very important, and I don't know about you, but I'm not able to get them on the internet call.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I read actually an article. It was about this Zoom situation, and they kind of came up with the term Zoom fatigue. And I actually experienced it on myself, like starting at 8 a.m. and finishing 6 p.m., 8 p.m. and staying on the Zoom pretty much non-stop. Not only it did not create a social interaction, but I was completely exhausted and not looking forward to it. But one thing that I realized about these social interactions and stuff is I believe what was working really well, as we discussed before we started for us, was that the switch to fully remote setup caused the increase in productivity because everybody was working remotely, or before that, everybody was in the office. The moment you try to mix it, that's not that productive, because the moment I started coming back to work, I spent half of my day meeting people, and half of my day I was just Zooming from my office. So that wasn't also kind of very productive. So it's really interesting problem to tackle, like what is the right balance there?
So for us, this was no change actually, because we have employees around the world, like 5 continents, 17 offices, and we were used to the fact that because of that, you would have on your meetings always someone remote. And years and years ago, people started to say, including myself, like, if it is a mixed meeting where you have partly people in the office, whatever equipment you use, and we have like very expensive equipment in the offices, but I personally prefer, if it is online meeting, everyone is online. And I, long time ago, started to do like, if it is online, don't come to my office. I'm online, and you guys are gonna be online, even if we are next room.
Agree.
I must admit this is currently the lesson we are learning the hard way in Kentico, because as you already mentioned, guys, everything was working when everybody was on remote. no problems there. Everything is working when everybody is in the office. But in the mixed setup, there are always some issues. So yeah, it's very difficult to tackle these.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. The next question. Is it possible to have a workplace culture without a common workplace? Is culture confined and defined by a specific location? How can we ensure that a company's culture is preserved? And that's open to the floor.
Okay, so maybe I will try to start to answer it. Well, the first thing, I don't believe that culture is connected with some specific place. It's rather connected with the people in the organization. And also through all these years, we figure out that the culture is different also across different offices. So we try to build the same culture as we have here in Czech office, also in our US or UK office, but it didn't work well because people are different there. So we figure out that we don't want to build the same culture across all these offices, but to build at least a similar culture built upon few same pillars. For us, it's our values. And the behavior we want to see in a company. So I believe that it will be really difficult to build the culture without any office, because then you cannot have all these micro interactions, all these small talks, to act upon the correct behavior and price it, or show people that some behavior is not well accepted by our company. So yeah, I believe that we will still need to have some office or some place when we will meet all together just to build that right culture.
Gentlemen?
I would say from my perspective, I believe the culture should be, let's say, like location agnostic, because moving forward, and to some points we made that companies or big companies now being distributed all over the world, I guess it would be not very wise option to basically build the culture around one place. Of course, you can have this kind of micro cultures, and that's what making each place very special. So when I was at Microsoft, people love to travel to Prague because it was very special. We love to travel to London's office and stuff like that. But the company culture, I believe it should be kind of a separate thing, and the company culture is something that should be embracing the company's goals, the company business, and support long-term the company business. So I would maybe do it or change it differently. We should actually build the culture that's supporting this location agnostic or remote collaboration by default.
In my case, I am trying to figure out what the culture is, because to be honest, I don't know. I know the definition, the official definition of company culture is defined by company values, and company values are what the company values. But well, it's the way it is, isn't it? Yeah. But when you look at the reality, right? So that's what you read in the books. But when you look at the reality, sometimes I have a feeling, maybe here in the Czech Republic, that company culture is defined by how often do you do barbecues and how informal, how much whatever shared fun space you have, and I kind of feel like this is what people think culture is, and I'm saying like, no, seriously. So if this is the culture, what we see a lot of happening here, then it's probably specific. Then, the other thing is that at YSL, for a long time, we do have company values. We call it attitudes, because I didn't like the values in the way that I've seen them, written everywhere on the walls, and people were ignoring them. I mean, that's what you see so often. So if they have values and they are not being followed, how could they create company culture? And then a friend of mine, and actually co-founder at Microsoft, Martin DeMartini, he told me during our discussions about company cultures, and we had a lot of very different opinions, and it was very, very emotional discussion. Let me put it this way. He said, you should realize that it is you who is building the company culture. And I was like, me? How could that be possible? And he said, yes, it is you. Forget all the papers, forget all the systems that we have and that I like. Forget all these, because the company culture is really defined by what do you allow employees to do. So if you have an escalation and you start shouting and you are making everyone absolutely clearly understand, make it absolutely clear that this is not acceptable behavior, that's how you create culture. So if that is the culture, then remote work won't have any impact on it. So,
Okay.
so when I figure out what the culture really is, I'll write a book about that. I don't think I will ever write a book, by the way.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question: how have your roles as leaders changed over the course of lockdown? So specifically, we're talking about lockdown.
Well, look, I think it's everywhere the same. I think the role itself did not change, but it was more catalyzed. So if you were a good leader, you became better leader. If you were bad leader, I mean, look at the politicians, right? Those who were doing bad, they're doing even worse, and those who were good, they are doing even better. I mean, compare Trump and Merkelova, for example, right? So that's what I mean. So I think that, of course, our role was to support the company and support the employees and all that, but that's our role anyway. And if we have been doing that without the lockdown, then we were just continuing to doing it, and the employees probably would appreciate it more. And if we haven't been doing it as leaders, then we're the other way around.
I actually wanted to touch on the other point that you called that we need to work as the leaders anyway. For me, the biggest change was that we really needed started to lead much more kind of focused and much more kind of disciplined fashion, because there was much less space for making or much less room for making any mistakes. And also there emerged some new areas that somebody needs to take on. I mean, of course, we had a team that touched a little bit the business continuity and stuff like that, but we never faced the problem, okay, tomorrow we need to kind of evacuate the whole building and stuff. And those were the new things that we need to take on. Also, we were never in the situation that the travel would basically stop overnight and claims would go through the roof. So we need to respond to that. And absolutely, the leaders are there to lead, so the leaders were leading. But I guess overnight, we need to take on, as they say in English, new hats, and we need to engage more people. We need to change the roles, and we need to form new teams, new groups. And it was really interesting exercise, because in that moment I learned, okay, this is really the agile as people are talking about in practice.
Yeah, so maybe a small comment also from my side. I believe that the change of the leader, or there wasn't much changes in our behavior and way of working for the leaders in Kentico. But definitely from the beginning of this crisis, we had much more work, because there was some crisis management. We had to figure out how to ensure some business continuity, if there will be any issues with working from home, etc. So I believe that was kindly new for us to have these issues and figure out how we will solve them. But apart from that, I believe that the role is still the same, maybe more catalyzed.
You reminded me one thing, actually. So when you're talking about this, what my day life changed completely. Mm-hmm. I had a lot more time to work, because CEO's job is normally that you meet with your people, right? And that's 80% or 90% of my time. Something a little bit for emails, but people get used to the fact that I'm not answering emails, I think. So, but now without the meetings or shorter meetings, I had significantly more time to think about strategy and figuring out what's the next thing. How are we going to transform the company with or without COVID? It's independent, just on the real strategic work. And as a person with engineering background, I really enjoyed it, and kind of carrying it over, and I'm trying to find more time on these things. So maybe, I don't know if it is a leadership or management part of the job, but that is, I spend significantly more time with strategy and how do we move forward.
I would add maybe one more thing to the leaders and the change of their roles. It wasn't definitely only about us. I saw so many emerging leaders. It was unbelievable. There were people or there were these words and phrases I heard much more often. I'm on it. Consider it done. Don't even think about it. It will be done tomorrow. It will be done overnight. Or when they shut down or announced the shutdown of the travel to US, the whole team was working overnight. Basically, the first moment they saw the spike in the travel booking, whole team was up. It was like 1 a.m. in the morning. And my good friend, I know he was considering leaving for some time because he wanted to find a next big thing in his engineering life. And he said, I'm not leaving this company in this moment. And those were the true leaders. So if you have such people in your teams, recognize them and you can count on them in the future. So that was a true leadership as well.
Not like we recognized our nurses, right? That's what I meant by the bad leaders.
A crisis can bring out the best in people. So
Yeah.
Next question. Are you considering any monetary support for equipping remote workplace of your employees?
I will maybe start. It's from my perspective, it's not about the monetary support. It's really about the understanding how to make people productive, working from home or working from anywhere. And how we want to approach is to really understand where and how people will work, and we want to kind of align the employee setup, the stack of the hardware and software tooling around that, because it would be kind of very short-sighted to equip everybody's kids' room or office or home office room or something like that with the chair or a second computer. Let's make sure we really understand, like, do they want to work from home? As one of you said, like, I don't want to work home with my kids jumping all over me. So should we set them up for the coffee shop? Should we set them up for the beach office? Or what is it exactly what makes your employees more productive? And we want to understand that. So for us, we kind of extended our kind of home office policy till September, and we will closely monitor it. In the meantime, we want to really understand what does the remote work means, what makes our employees productive, and how we should support them. So giving them some money, it would be very kind of short-sighted from my perspective.
Yeah, we are at Kentico currently running some pilot program because we are also very interested in what will come next, what will be the next normal way of working for us. So currently we agree that people will have one equipment, and it's up to them to decide where this equipment will be, if it's in the office or at their home. And basically at the end of summer, we'd like to decide what will be next. We are currently collecting all the issues connected, for example, with that mixed meetings and other things we are facing right now. But what's interesting, we also did some survey across the company, and more than 2/3 of our employees mentioned that they'd like to still spend at least 50% of their time in the office. So it's really difficult right now to figure out if we'd like to also give them the equipment for the home office or what will be next. So we're just patiently waiting, and we will see at the end of summer how this will evolve.
Well, in our case, the biggest problem is we're fighting with legislation. So across European Union, the legislation is just disaster. Every country is totally different. Different requirements, what you need to provide with employees, what kind of insurance, like, France is just something totally different than UK, and it's totally different than Czech. French R is always the best when we're talking about employees. And that's a big headache, right? So first of all, thinking about the compliance, making compliant environment seems to be nearly impossible under current terms. So what you can do is that you can say, okay, I accept the risk. Maybe in some countries like France, you don't want to accept the risk, but here in the Czech Republic, you can say, I accept the risk. You just do it, and you just ignore the rules. So that's, I would say, our, when you want to do it like a lot, then the compliance is one thing where I think we should start pushing on the EU to sort of align legislation in this level. But thinking that EU would align anything that's related to employment is like, I'm not so sure. And then on the equipment, I think, in 21st century, everyone has notebook. They have good docking stations, displays. Supplying another docking station and another display for homework, I don't think that's a big deal. I would say I'm much more bothered by the legislation. And if we provide additional little bit of equipment, I mean, everyone has mobile phone. I mean, everyone is pretty much mobile anyway. I don't remember the time when we bought like normal computer last time. So yeah, for computer games,
It's still a thing for us.
so we are completely, but we are traveling a lot. So we need to have people like mobile, and so the cost, the additional cost is, I think, sort of for us small. VPNs and all that, that's been in place for forever. But the legislation is really, your liability then in some countries, to give you more context, maybe. Like in France, I remember that we need to pay electricity because if they use your company equipment at home, you need to contribute them for heating, you need to contribute them for their rent, and then your payroll is becoming twice as much complicated, right? In the Czech Republic, it's about the liability. I'm not HR. I think we'll have some HR people here who can tell more about that. But the legislation is really what keeps me awake at night.
Google and Facebook obviously announced that they will permit their employees to work from home until the end of the year. Twitter have announced that their employees are permitted to work at home forever. Do you want to comment on that? Have you anything to say about that?
I would follow up on what you just said. It's probably US only, because I can't imagine like this happening in the EU. We are struggling exactly with the same problems.
Well, you can accept the risk. I think that some companies did that, the larger ones, and they say, the fines are too small, we don't care. It's easier to accept the fines or potential fines than trying to be compliant. But
probably, yeah. But yeah, I mean, to comment on their policies, I actually don't think it's such a big deal, because most of the employees, as far as I know, were doing it anyway. So it's more like a formalizing, you don't need to think about it, just do it.
It is interesting in a perspective where there was a time when they tried to build all these campuses where they would lock all their employees and they would provide all the services so that people don't leave company campus and they can stay there since early morning till early morning. So that sounds, that it almost feels like it goes against it, right? Why did they invest in these huge campuses? But times they are changing, I guess.
This is a popular question. How do you see the future of the work week? Are you thinking about a 4-day week? I know that it has been introduced in some companies and in some countries in Scandinavia, for example, including one of my friends who works a 4-day week. And he told me he works harder than ever because he knows he has 3 days off. So he really works his ass off. 4-day week, gentlemen?
We were considering it for some small time.
And now you are
that's actual good thing to consider, because you can see that through that 4 days, the people can be really productive and do a lot of work. And even in our company, Fridays are a little bit slower because we have these let's say, innovation days in Friday. So people tend to study some new technologies and try to, work on things they are really enthusiastic about. So yeah, we were considering it. We will see in future how this will evolve. Currently, for us, a bigger topic is if we are going to go full remote or we will stay in some hybrid mode. So we will see.
That's actually an interesting idea, having one day or even half a day dedicated to learning, and development of individuals. That's actually.
We call it User Friday. Well, people across the company use it in very various ways. So yeah, some people study something new. Some people are trying to finish their regular work. So
I would say to this it really depends on the on your work, on the business you are in. So if your business is running non-stop, it's really hard to say, okay, I'm working only like three days a week. I don't like the term that Oliver Delohy, our CEO, used once. It's not about like a work-life balance, it's like a work-life integration. And coming back to what we discussed, like working remotely, working in the environment that works best for you, I guess that's really about it. And I guess this whole kind of concept, it's Monday to Friday work days, then weekend is off. I mean, the whole world is changing, and I would actually appreciate it myself if I can pick which days works for me, or if I can travel with my kids, not during the summer when everybody's traveling, but when it's the best options to travel to the destination I want to be in. And let's say I have this super bright idea when I'm, I don't know, somewhere on vacation. I want to work on that, and I don't want to struggle like with reporting. Okay, now I work for half a day and I took the vacation for the rest of the week. So I don't love the concept of the work-life integration. And from my past experiences when I was at Netflix, they had unlimited vacation many years ago. And it wasn't really about the unlimited vacation. It was about getting your job done and just then taking the rest until you have new assignment, and make sure that you're not blocking anybody. Everything is moving forward. You are meeting the deadlines. You are doing an amazing job. And it wasn't about overworking. It was really about your commitment and accountability to deliver what you have to do.
Yeah, I believe that's a really great idea, because we're playing.
Yeah. So you saw this Brojovka before. Yeah. We are really proud of our concept.
I think this is still all right. There could be worse things running.
I feel like I'm at the Super Bowl or something like that. Advertising.
So
we are playing with this idea of results only work environment. When you are focused on fulfilling or achieving the results, and it doesn't matter if you are able to do it in 2 hours or 2 weeks. Basically, the results are what matters, and because whole company strategy is built upon successful execution. So then, if people are capable to deliver these results, we really don't care as a company if they will deliver it in few hours or a few days.
And then I have a question for you, actually, because I'm just interested in the opinion, because we were in this situation and there were some guys that were able to deliver in 3 days. And we're always thinking, okay, how about giving them like bigger job, like more assignments, because they're clearly doing amazing jobs. So why not to use their full capacity?
That's actually the next step, right? Yeah. If you see those capable individuals.
And of course, give them more compensation, right? But really make sure you maximize the output.
We had this discussion recently about 4 days a week, brought by our head of HR. And what I did is he suggested that if we do that, it is very likely that in 4 days, we're going to do same amount of work, like in 5 days, so that we don't even need to decrease salaries, and it will work better. And so what I did is I told, and he said he thought that we should pilot it somewhere in a closed environment to see how it works. So I offered him, okay, Jarda, so we'll start with you. You are going to be working only 4 days a week. And the 5th day, I want to see your phone turned off. And he was like, are you crazy? It's absolutely impossible. I'm working like 15 hours a day. So I probably answered the question. But we were considering it, but first of all, we agree that it's not a good idea to pilot it in COVID. And I'm not a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of adding vacation. So we don't have unlimited vacation, but we are adding vacation every year or two. Getting to that direction, I think I'm not even sure. I think we're like 6 weeks or so. And at these numbers, you already see that many people are not able to use the vacation. Why? Because their spouses don't have 6 weeks of vacation. So their spouses only 4. 1 week is all right, but then they are saying like, I don't know, what am I going to be doing, right? So.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with this, and there was the same pattern at Netflix when we had unlimited vacation. It wasn't about the vacation at all. It was about the freedom and your responsibility, that you are responsible for your results, and you have all the freedom to take time when you need it. And we did a kind of stats, and on average, people took 18 days out of unlimited vacation. And they were all happy, and they told everybody we have unlimited vacation.
Oh, for US, 18 days is still a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question, it's quite long, so bear with me, gentlemen. Small self-organized teams where the leader is part of the team or there is no official leader position was a big theme even before COVID-19. Did the experience of full remote work change your organization structure, or are you considering some other changes?
Well, we talked about, we had interesting story that we were actually transforming in our R&D into manager-less organization structure during COVID. And we were planning a meeting, like company-wide meeting or R&D-wide meeting for that purpose. It was like May 11th or something like that. And then of course with COVID, everything was on hold. And I was almost thinking like, we should delay this. That's not a good time to do that. And they told me, but Václav, you told them that we're going to be managerless organization back in December. And they already have their jobs. So, you know, they're gone. It's their last working day. They're in their notice period. We have no other option. So we had to handle it just a little bit on this note. But look, it didn't, no, we were not impacted. The organization structure is the same. We just managed to do this transition through the period. But when you talk about things like vacation approval, I actually never understood what is the value of a manager approving vacation. I mean, seriously, in 21st century, I mean, yeah, maybe in production, yes. But when you need to plan shifts, that's a whole different story, right? But all people around me, except the production, work in a way where people suggest, and I can't think of a case when a manager would say, no, I'm not gonna give you this vacation. I cannot imagine that. So what we are paying these people for are, you know, the best paid people in the company. They go to ERP system and click, yes, I approve vacation. This is value at like crazy, isn't it? So it did not change, and I think that I'm sorry, but I think they're not needed, redundant. And there are some people who don't like me because saying that, but I think that.
So maybe a question, how do you see the company organization? I mean, we can remove the managers, but if we go to the level up, what's the role of the, as they call it, like a C-level CEO or like a top management? Is it needed at all, or should it be like a fully self-organized?
I think you need to have, I think that you need to have some management. I think it's about, you know, how many layers of that management you really need.
Okay.
And how much you're structuring it. And then you have your, first of all, you have your legal requirements, right? So the biggest hurdle in this type of organization is that the IT systems are not ready for that. So, okay, you have a team of 7 people. Who has the right to approve the vacation, right? That's the biggest problem, right? Who has the right to approve budget? And these systems are not ready for that. But when you go up, first of all, you have some, your like legal duties, and that cannot be substituted. Then you need to sort of cascade information. But one thing that this managerless organization and self-organized teams are solving more is that communication between the teams is much easier. It's counterintuitive, but I wish to have this skill to do that in the top level management. Sometimes I just can't help myself to feel that we are still siloed organization, and the silos go as the silos are defined by the managers. Where we don't have managers, it's significantly less siloed. And once we have the management, including myself, then we are starting to think in silos. Okay, I'm responsible for this. So to be honest, I don't know where this is going to take us. The way how I'm not even pushing it to the rest of the organization. I'm just saying, like, it's up to you. Look at what we are doing, and if you like it, and I see that it's inspiring other divisions, but on the top level, learning by doing. So at this moment, I still think I kind of feel like I need like my board of directors or executive managers. A couple of years, I would tell you that we need managers in R&D. So times are changing.
Very good.
Well, I must say that we haven't done any big change during the COVID in the organization perspective, but we did quite a big one about a year ago when we decided to move from that more centralized way of working to that decentralized way of working and put more responsibility and accountability to teams, to development teams. We started that change also with introducing the OKRs and empowering the team to define actually the objectives and key results they are trying to achieve. So we are still fighting with that a bit, but it's improving from month to month, and I believe that's a way for our organization also for the future to deliver great results and to empower the people in the teams. Yeah, it's always better than to do these decisions on some centralized level.
You mentioned accountability and empowerment quite a few times there. Would you agree with the statement that if I'm an employee and I care about my company, I can work from anywhere in the world, location agnostic?
Definitely. If you have these accountable people in your company, they will find a way how to accomplish the goals in any setup you can imagine.
Until you need your production line that you can't really move at home.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So we had an interesting situation when we went to the remote office. We work with printers, as you said, or multifunction devices, right? And now you have everyone at home. And most of the work we do is with the devices. So what are you going to do? And I'm talking about multifunction devices that they are like this big, right? So imagine what would your partner tell you if you bring this. First of all, it's too big to bring it like this, right? But imagine that you would have that in the middle of your living room. And we were sharing probably to a lot of pictures, like how the work home office environment looked like. And I still remember the lady that had working on the computer in a small corner, and then the three sons laying down. They were bonded and they had tape over their mouths. But imagine that you would do this, right? It's not possible. So we actually utilized our robotic arms. We have a research project. It was originally developed for robotic arms, but so it's a robotic arm that's clicking on the device, and we used this for actual remote control of the devices, and that actually enabled the work. The interesting part about that is that you have certain things that on the first glance you would think like that's not possible. And when you are thrown in that situation, then you start to figuring out what are the solutions. And there was a time when you entered the office and there was 20 robots, and you had 2 people who were just, sometimes you need to add paper or something, or there was a paper jam. And you only hear the noise like it's doing like this, and everything is moving by itself, and it was almost a scary picture, to be honest, right? So that's one thing, that there are things that you can solve, but then we have production line for our hardware production. We also produce hardware stuff for our solutions, and that production line weighs a couple tons. You can't move it, right? So actually production stayed operational during the COVID and people were coming to production space, we did certain steps like trying to isolate shifts and all these best practices. We did not figure out how to take this environment that has certain requirements for clean rooms and logistics, warehouses, parts. So some things were just not possible to take home.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Next question. Have you considered or have you implemented desk sharing since with remote work and home office? Not everybody is always in the office. How did it fly or how did it go? And what do you think about it? Desk sharing.
For us, we did not really implement it. I believe we have a few teams that had hot desks before, but as it was so sudden when the whole office moved out, then they basically moved back into the same environment. However, as I mentioned earlier, this is a big topic for our new premise and basically the future, because it's super obvious that not everybody wants to work from the same place like every day in the office. So we will need to kind of implement this somehow for the future.
Yeah, well, we haven't considered something like this sharing, even if our head of HR currently was joking about it. We have too much space for the amount of people available in the offices. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. I'm not sure if it's a thing for us, because I still believe that every employee should have his own place in the office. But we will see. Maybe if we grow more and we will see the trend that people will spend more of their time at home, that's something worth consideration.
I would maybe, if I can add one more thing. It wasn't about hot desking or basically setting up your office for people who wants to come or who wants to work from home. But it's basics. What we had, we get a standing desk to everybody, and we implemented the Spotify model. So basically every 2 months we dynamically reorganized our teams around the priorities and what we need to deliver. And on Friday, when the planning week was over, everybody took their desk and they formed the new groups together. And it was like every 2 months we changed basically the whole seating, and it was working very well. That the teams, the full stack teams, they were able to sit together and deliver the work. So it was working pretty well.
That's something I can imagine. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Is that your contribution?
I think we're back to culture, right? So what is culture? So in this segment, in this question, we can say that the culture of shared working space is different from region to region. Like in Japan, having dedicated workspace is like, wow, that's like, no. And then, yeah, in Japan, this desk would really be for 2 people. They have like 90 centimeters means that you are very, very, very important person, right? Normally you have like this space. So that's in Japan, right? If you are in the Czech Republic or in CEE region, then people here are very much emotionally attached to their belongings and they want to have their flower on their desk. So here you won't get a lot of benefit for saving a little bit because the mood will just go down. And I've seen that with companies who did that and employees here hated it. And then in the US, it's like so. I mean, like entry-level, mid-level workers, they are just absolutely used to that. So I think it's, when you say considering that, then I would have to say, okay, in which region? In the Czech Republic, no. Elsewhere, yeah, depending on the location.
I can remember one funny story. It's connected with our Australian office, and for a long time, these people working there had a really small office. And when they moved to the new one and they had the actual window they could open and have fresh air there, they were just really very happy that it's amazing kind of office because we have windows now. So yeah, that was a huge change. But yeah, me also as engineer, I cannot imagine that I won't have my own place where I can put all e-gadgets and fake things.
Oh, in the US, they have their cubicles,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I know.
And they have their trolleys, and they take their trolley with them to that particular cubicle that's just available.
Yeah.
And they log their trolleys.
But for example, in our US office, we try to build something more similar to our European offices, just to give enough space for people.
And we did the same. We made like a little bit open space environment in just 20 people. And we put just a little bit of dividers between the desks. And they were really like, where are our cubicles? I can be seen here. And they were used to be just hidden in that cubicle. And for us, it was like disaster. I could never imagine working in that cubicle, just claustrophobic, right? And they were like, no, I want my cubicle back. It's that. So if that is the culture.
I always at my cubicle at SpaceX and whenever we did this kind of Friday shuffling. I came twice late. Once I took a vacation, the other time I came late. Twice I ended up next to the bathroom. So always be on time.
The next question. Okay, interesting. Don't you think that the increase or same productivity as in the office was caused by the situation and people afraid of losing their jobs?
You think that software developers would be ever in the future or now, they would really be scared of losing their job?
I saw it in the past. I was at
the past. I'm not talking about
okay.
now and in the future. I just can't imagine that.
They are the future workers. Yeah.
So I was, people were, a lot of questions in different interviews during the past couple of months were about, so what are your cost reductions? What are you doing? How are you reacting, right? And my traditional answer was, I really can't figure out, should we be firing people or hiring people? That did not apply on engineers because you can't fire engineers because you can't get them back, and you cannot hire them because no one is firing engineers. Everyone is firing each and every other position is okay. Like you need assistant right now or someone on the reception, you put advertisement and you get 30 CVs like overnight. But I don't think, a little bit improved. There were a few companies, right? But you see that there were a few companies who reduced engineers and Holbrunner just jumped on them. And we were just, I
would maybe add to that, and I agree with your point completely. But if people are afraid of losing their job and that's spiking the productivity, I'm actually not sure if I want these people, because I want the people who are motivated primarily by the work itself, by some other factors. And whenever I'm talking about like what I learned in Silicon Valley and stuff, it's super important always as a manager, as a company, to understand what is the motivation you want to see in your people. And these motivations must be aligned. If they are not aligned, if people are there only for the job security, only for the paycheck, long term, it's never gonna work. So sure, there might have been a case that people started to work when they realized, okay, I might lose the job, etc. But this spike is always temporarily. And
that's an interesting idea. So what we want to do is that we want to figure out, the key is how do you figure out who is there for the paycheck, right? So in theory, what we could have done is that look for the people who have increased security, who have increased their performance, and say, you increased your performance because you are afraid of your job, you're out.
Interesting concept, right?
How dare you increase your performance?
Well, I must admit that a few people from Kentico reach out to me, people who are with company for some longer time already, and they ask me if it would help to company if they will lower their salary or something like that. So
what did you say?
I said no.
Yeah, well, I would say yes. Nobody reached out to me.
But it was kind of nice. You could see there the compassion, and then people really care about the well-being of the company itself, not only about themselves and
It's certainly
their
a
own
lovely gesture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was really nice, and I would definitely not fire these people. You know?
Give them a raise.
Yeah.
You know, those are really interesting points. I even had somebody reaching out to me because when the crisis started, they were very careful about the cost, so they were very careful about the promotions and stuff. And somebody reached out to me, hey, can I actually give some of my salary to one of my direct report? And
that happened too.
And it's really interesting question because I mean, if you are a manager, maybe you are having problems with delivering the hard message, or maybe you are trying to artificially keep the person on the team with saving by your salary. I don't know. Those are all the kind of interesting.
I had another problem. So I had a manager who wanted to do this, and then we were thinking like, okay, that's great. I mean, gesture. And it was not necessarily related to COVID, but it was a team that had a lot of work and they really did a good job. But then I was thinking like, but there are other teams as well. And it just so happened that the manager of this team, he didn't need to work for the rest of his life. So, you know, one salary was just like, you wouldn't feel it. And I was thinking, how about the other departments or divisions who don't have managers who can afford giving up full salary? And how fair it is. So what looked like a perfect gesture turned out into a nightmare, like how you decide, because it's really not fair to the others.
All decisions are wrong.
Yeah. You're doomed if you do, you're doomed if you don't.
Yeah.
So what was the actual decision?
Well, we allowed it once, and when that happened second time, we said no, sorry.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break for 5 minutes so you can get some refreshments. The good thing about a live event is there is catering and refreshments. That doesn't happen with the Zoom event, so unless you prepare them at home yourself. So we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll come back and the panel will answer some more questions. Thank you. Welcome back. Let's dive into the next question. Thank you, Dominic, for the question. What are your thoughts about adjusting pay based on the employee's actual work location in full remote company?
We were bankrupt. Okay. Oh, Czech Republic is super cheap country, right? On average, the employees are 3 times cheaper than 3.5 compared to other locations we have in Australia, Japan, US. It's 1/3, if not better. So, okay, if we adjust everyone else to Czech salaries, we would be okay. We would be actually pretty okay. Right? That's actually a good idea. Then gonna fly, I'm afraid.
I would like to see then the reactions of your employees in USA, right? With Czech salary there.
I would like to see your reactions if we start paying engineers 3 times as much.
Well, we actually did it a few times. It was mostly connected with relocation of the office. So we were trying to stay competitive in the region. So we did it in the past, or if some role was transferred from the USA to Czech office, then it was kind of decreased because you know, the costs here are much lower than in the US. So we actually did it, but currently we are still pretty much tied to the regions around the offices. So maybe in the future we'll see.
I would actually provide a little bit different perspective on this problem, because from my perspective, how I see it is not about the location, it's about the price of the specific engineer. Because to give you an example, if you have an engineer from Silicon Valley making, I don't know, if I go really crazy, $1 million per year, you are not going to adjust him, or you are not going to convince him that, okay, now I'm going to pay 1 million Czech korunas per year, right, in the Czech Republic. So it's always about the total compensation to the and the perceived value of the specific engineer or an employee. And sure, you can find like a local anomalies, let's say, that for some reason people love to live in the Brno and get the lower salaries than in Silicon Valley, because for them there is much more value in living in Brno than actually earning that much money. So, and the proposal that, okay, I'm doing the same job as my counterpart in Silicon Valley, like, okay, go and work in Silicon Valley. The real question, and in the context of the fully remote collaboration, is how to basically enable this so that whoever is working fully remotely, where do you basically base this employee? From what place are you going to? Are you starting calculating the value or the price you as a company owner you are willing to pay, and what the employee is going to offer? And I don't really have a good answer for that, because I mean it can be a Czech engineer who will suddenly work in Silicon Valley and he won't have even enough money to pay the rent. So that's the real question, and I'm not sure. Maybe if I use my analogy about the total compensation, for some engineer, it's so important to live in the Silicon Valley, so maybe they need to get this extra money. And for some people, it's so important to live in Bali, so they can live out of much lower salary, as long as you can allow to live them there. So yeah, I don't think it's only about the money, but it's really about like what's important for a specific person.
Well, and then you have tax, right? So tax works differently in US and in the Czech Republic, and that your total employment costs are different.
That's true.
And then, you know, some work in our favor, some works in their favor. And for example, if you have in the Czech Republic, like employee stock option program, the way how you tax it, Babiš will get most of your employee stock value, right?
Yeah.
While in US, that taxation is much more affordable.
Yeah.
So it is really hard to compare. But I've read a study a couple of years ago, actually, that predicted that the salaries in IT will have tendency to flatten around the world more than other roles, because already years ago, IT has been, or software development has been a lot globalized industry. Developers from India are pretty famous, right? So what I don't have the data, but it would be interesting to look at what is the ratio between, let's say, average software engineer salary compared to the national average or median, and how is that changing country to country? And can we conclude that the IT salaries are one of the reasons why software engineers are so well paid compared to the rest of the country here in the Czech Republic, is because IT is more globalized, and that has its impact. That was the purpose of that article, but that was like 3 years ago. So that would be a way how to look at it, if that is really happening or not, and find some, that I don't have these numbers on top of my head.
One interesting point you brought up is the equity in the company, because even you have very high salaries in the Silicon Valley compared to the rest of the world. You are going to spend all of them pretty much if you want to live a decent life or rent a nice place.
In California.
And in California. And people actually are okay with that. They are taking their salaries as some sort of like a pocket money to pay for the living and to basically break even every month, because they are waiting for the big bang they are getting from the equity. So again, that's another variable in this whole equation, how you should think about like the total compensation. What are you going to offer them? If it's, as you said, if it's working tax-wise or not, where you should be based, is it Czech Republic or not? Also, the legalities like the tax domicile and stuff like that. Yeah, it's really complex, but to look at it that, okay, let's try to kind of pay the same base salary I guess it's very misleading, and it should not be kind of, I mean, it can be very appealing for the Brno developers, but they're definitely not the way again. How
and I think, some Brno developers may sort of exploit a system and say, I'm going to be remotely working in the US, but this opportunity is technically very limited, because that means you need to be a contractor, and then you need to do your tax. That defers a lot of people, but also a lot of there is legal issue in terms of intellectual property, which is much easier under our jurisdiction when you are an employee. And what is the willingness of the companies in the US employ people here in the Czech Republic on this type of contract? And employment is impossible, right? Because legally they would have to establish a company or a registered branch or something. And once they do that, they don't have the need of paying that much.
Also, I believe that this topic is something that we should try to solve right now or in the near future, because especially with IT companies, we will try to attract the best talent worldwide, because we know that also our small pool here in Czech Republic, the pool of talents is really small, and people are trying desperately to get new engineers into their companies. So in future, if we will try to grow bigger and have more people, then it will be really a thing, and we will need to try to look elsewhere or try to get these great minds from another companies. So
we think we have very competitive
these two options, right?
Yes and no. We think we have very competitive market for engineers in the Czech Republic, right?
I believe that's same across the globe in IT.
Okay, so imagine that you go to the Valley. You're a graduated engineer, and you apply for a job with one of the large companies. Only after school, your sign-up bonus and you are a good student, right? Your sign-up bonus with any of the largest companies for 2 years. So you sign up that you're going to be working there for 2 years. After school, your sign-up bonus is $200,000. Right, that's what, 5 million Czech koruna? Sign-up bonus, just come work for us, here's 5 million, right? This is competitive market. That's why I'm saying we don't have competition here. We don't know what competition is.
Or we never started doing that. Maybe we should.
Following on from that question, how are your companies coping with the lack of engineers and other experts in the labor market? Are you finding and raising the talent in-house, or where do you find the experts of the future?
Well, I would just reduce the birth control. It takes time though, so.
Well, for us, for example, we introduced a few years back some program we call Kentico Academy, when we try to actually teach young potential talents to do the development right, to actually know the languages and be capable of developing some applications. Because from what we can see from the universities, people finish their studies, they're full of potential, but the knowledge or the knowledge they can use in the company to build something real is really not there. So we are kind of simulating what should universities do in their daily jobs. So we introduced that program. We had these cycles of 6 months to try to pick 6 to 8 talented people and figure out if there will be great engineers, and try to let them work on the actual product to see how they will perform in the real world. So we tried that. It was working quite well, because we also have some small office on the university, so they were capable to get there right from their lessons. And currently we just stopped, because we had so many young people in the company that we we needed to outweigh it with more senior people. So, but yeah, that was kind of way or program that really worked well for us.
It's actually a great segue to my point, because if you read this question, this is basically implying that you have a problem with the lack of engineers in your company. But your real problem is that you actually want to deliver more product faster to the market. And if you can deliver it with one engineer, you don't care.
Yeah, right.
And so we had a look on this a little bit more holistically, and we basically analyzed exactly the same thing. If we manage to bring in, let's say, more junior engineers, we're actually slowing down the whole development, because exactly you need some certain kind of ratio between senior engineer and junior engineer. That's
in a short term.
Exactly. The second thing is that maybe the problem is not the lack of engineer. Maybe the problem is the organization of your work and focusing on too many things, but spreading thin your engineering organization. So there are many, I would say, steps before you actually go and hiring, because first you need to answer all of these questions. What is the real problem you are trying to solve? And can you basically fix it in-house, because you can maybe fix it and do not even increase the cost. And only then, once you identify the problem and you actually know what are the missing resources, then go and get them and get them aggressively, because you did your homework, you did your exercise, and you know that you need to hire, I don't know, like 5 senior engineers. And you kind of calculated the ROI, what you are expecting for them. So you can actually go maybe with this 5 million in your pocket, because you know you will make 10, right?
Yeah, exactly.
On the topic of university, we actually think that universities should not prepare students for programming languages. And they tend to do it more and more. That's how we feel about that, and we don't like it. When I started with development, then you know what? Most of these technologies, they're gone. You know, who programs today in C++, or who programs today in assembler? Yeah? 3, right?
Tesla, SpaceX.
So these technologies are gone, right? If it's 3 people. So and of course it's not productive, and there is a good reason for that. So I'm, as an engineer, I'm saying programming is just one, or maybe 2. The functional programming might be quite a different. Yeah. So you have like two general paradigms, and then learning a language. We're talking about full stack developers. I also want developers that are able to learn any language. Like, you know, if someone is telling me like I'm Java and I'm not gonna learn anything else, I'm like, seriously? But working with universities, yes, but what we want universities is to teach them thinking, to teach them algorithmic thinking.
But that also think that it's really not happening, because these people are not doing these projects. They are not forced to think how to solve this difficult issues.
That's why that's a role of the companies to have a relationship with the students, and that's what most companies do.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about actually the question was, how do we hire people? Or how do we get engineers? What I'm telling our team is that, look, there is the same amount of people in Brno or Prague or Ostrava, whatever. So don't tell me that there is no people on the market. There is the same amount of people. So if we can get them, the problem is not with the people, the problem is with our competitiveness. So the way how I look at it is, if we cannot hire people, we're not enough competitive, because there is still a lot of developers and they just prefer to work somewhere else.
Yeah. And I would add to that, the competitiveness is not only about the money and about the package you are offering to your engineers. It's about the project you are going to give them, the environment. That's the whole thing. I was shocked when I actually moved to SpaceX, because you are moving there from like Silicon Valley companies. You have everything, as we discussed before. You have like a hairdresser, you have amazing cafeterias, you have a massage salon, like you name it. And you come to do a factory, like a real factory. But there is one thing, there is a racket. And nobody cares about anything else. And they are working in the cubicles, and you are being underpaid, because you're actually getting some stock options. that are actually are invested in the company that flies the rocket. So really, I guess this is excellent point. The competitiveness, you can always fight, and don't even think about it. You need to start with the money, start with your project, give them something that people are passionate about, and it will go a long way.
It's a rocket science.
It's a rocket science. Yeah.
Give them a rocket science and they will worry your sweat and tears.
And actually it goes really long way because they invited in even my wife for the interview that time. And when I finished, my wife was like waiting outside and she told me one thing, you are getting this job. Don't even think about otherwise.
So yeah, it's always full package, and as you mentioned, there's more senior candidates you are trying to talk with, the more interesting the job or project they will work on is for them.
So well paid.
Yeah. They know that money are not the issue. They want to enjoy the work actually. So yeah.
Next question is from Menko. Thank you, Menko, for your question. When discussing postmortems of successful projects, breakthroughs on projects often come about from chance meetings. Do you see an alternative to this online?
So what is chance meeting?
A chance meeting is just, for example, by chance you meet someone. For example.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought it's a new agile thing I haven't heard about.
Not planned or anything like that. Kind of spontaneous.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks.
That's the grassroots we talked about at the beginning, right? That you are in the office and you listen to what people talk about or complain about, and people. I mean, ask yourself, how many times did you share something very personal about your personal situation over a teleconference? So, did you? We're not going to ask what was that.
Yeah, you don't know.
I would be curious, I admit.
Well, probably it can happen, but it's more natural and.
What it's scaled, right? It's just like the technology. If you have 3 people who know assembler, that doesn't mean that assembler is still popular language.
Yeah. I would answer maybe a little bit differently here. If I see the online alternative, I see an alternative online and offline at the same time. Embrace this project. Embrace this. Issues happens. You need to run the postmortems. Breakthrough happens. Just embrace it and make sure you actually catalyze it within your company. Make sure that you have a incident management process that whenever something bad happens, you need to kind of formally make sure that you run the postmortem. If you want, as you were mentioning, you have this innovative Fridays, put it in the company. The breakthroughs might happen on these Fridays as well. So basically, don't wait for it that somebody will meet by chance in the hallway and they will start discuss something. Try to catalyze it, help it, go ahead for it.
Yeah, well, maybe something. I'm not a big fan of trying to put processes on everything. I really like when the engineers, when something go wrong or something bad happen, they just on their own feel the urge to solve it and to prevent it for the future sake. So I like when these things are happening just in some organic way, that somebody will shout out, hey guys, we need to solve this. So he will call the meeting and they put their heads together and solve the issue. And I believe it's awesome also when this works for, good things, for these celebrations, like we achieved something, so let's celebrate it and be a little bit spontaneous, not try to force it through the processes.
I mean, that's an excellent point, and I have to say, we don't want to call it process either, but sometimes it just happens that in the office of some engineering team happens to be a box of beers and some pizzas just magically appeared. And it's a process that, okay, we want to keep the team together for the rest of the night and let them work on it. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's basically what I meant by embracing it. Don't force the people, of course, but try to encourage them, cultivate the environment.
Motivate.
Exactly.
I'm trying to figure out how long this perception of a software engineer that is the guy that eats only pizza and drinks Coca-Cola, how long will this prevail?
Okay, let's move on. Hansa has a question. Yes, what is your daily routine that keeps you productive in these times? Anything unusual?
Sleeping.
Anything illegal?
Sleeping.
Sleeping.
No, my rule is like have your 8 hours and 30 minutes. That's my minimum. That's my rule. And without it, I know I'm not going to be productive. So good sleep is just mandatory for me. 9 hours is good. I have like my sleeping app tells me that I'm on average like 8 hours, 45 minutes or so. So and not everyone needs that.
Yeah.
My routine is get a lot of sleep.
Margaret Thatcher famously ran Great Britain with less than 4 hours sleep a night. Could you cope with that?
I don't look like Margaret Thatcher. I think.
Well, for me, these are just, the small things like, especially from the beginning, to put on the work clothes and sit behind the desk, go through the daily routine, same I have in the office. But right now I decided that I will just use my office a little bit more than before, because I'm kind of missing that spot, that small place with that, I call it, the vibe of creativity. So I decided to spend every day in the office. I believe that I can get bored quickly with that, but from now on it's working for me, and we will see in future. But during the beginning of the crisis, I tried it small rituals like to put on the work clothes and go through the email, because that's what I usually did when I went to the office using public transport. So yeah, these small routines.
David?
For me, the tractor is helping. If you finish reading all the news in Slack, it will give you tractor sometime. So for me to finish the day when everything is kind of down to zero, or I have like the reminders for the next day, and I can leave my work thoughts in the office. That's basically what's making me really calm.
Do you really believe you?
I don't do
that
that.
it is possible?
At the sea level, right?
It is. I mean, you can set the reminders or snooze some notification, and I'm not saying.
Okay, yeah, snoozing that. It's all right. Well, at 1,500 emails in my mail, it shouldn't bother me as well, right?
Yeah. I was actually leaving today here with 10 emails in my inbox.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I do that sometimes as well. So twice a year or so, I just take all the older emails and I just mark them as read.
Yeah.
Well, because you know what, if I didn't answer for the last 2 months,
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
probably got anyway,
Already
right?
solved, right?
So twice a year it happens to me that I have 0 other emails.
But yeah, from that perspective, for me, it really works to just close the door of the office and then clean my head and think about different stuff. So yeah, I believe that's a good one.
And then I just want to add, during the quarantine, I just love to take a walks in the garden, just to go around and do something outside and then come back. We
actually started to garden with my wife, because it was just terrible to stay in our flat for all the time. We don't even have a balcony, so yeah, bad decision when we bought that flat. But we decided to move to garden and do the gardening, and it was amazing.
What was actually not working for me were some of the recommendations that were circling on the internet, like spend some time, we were discussing off the record, spend some time with your coworkers having a beer or something. I tried twice, didn't really click with me, because I much rather had a kind of vibe with my wife or my neighbors having a beer, because I needed to actually switch off the monitor.
Because inevitably the conversation turns back to work.
Not only about that, but it was weird just to look at the screen.
And speaking of that, I can say that the COVID impact on my wine cellar is noticeable.
Yeah, that's another topic, right?
The impact in my house was the same as the travel impact on Kiwi. Almost 0.
Okay, let's move on. We're getting towards the hour, so we have a couple more questions for the panel, and then we let them have a beer or a glass of wine because they thoroughly deserve it. Long-term employees usually get few percentage annual increases, while newcomers ask for the same money right off the bat without being with the company for years. How do you address this discrepancy and possible tension?
So I can answer what is my vision to do that. So we're not doing it right now, but that's where I want to go. So in engineering, right? So it makes sense for other parts of the company, but now I'm speaking for engineering. So in one hand, you want to reward you want to reward the loyalty. So you're thinking of how should we reward the loyalty? I think stock option program is a good way how to do that, how to reward the loyalty. I don't think that the primary pay should be the tool for rewarding loyalty. And it is double-sided sword, because at the same time, sometimes it's exactly these employees who are there 10 years and they continue to do the things the same way they've done for the last 10 years. And you need to change, and you need to evolve. And it's these people who are actually, in some cases, holding you back. So it's really a tricky situation. But about the compensation, what I want to do in engineering, my challenge is that I think everybody is senior today, right? Everybody is senior developer. And the way how I look at it is that we tend to reward talent, not the real skills. And because you have talented people, you rather tell them, okay, you're here 2 years, but you're already senior, and then you give them the title and you give them the rise. So what I want to do, and I don't like this. So what I would like to do is that I would like to introduce maturity models, if you heard of that. So pretty much saying what are the skills, what levels, and pretty much saying, if you're on this level, here you have 5, 6, 7, 8 categories, and what you need to do in each category, and then you're on this level. And then my plan is to say, I don't care how long are you here, I don't care how old are you, I care about what are your skills and what are you actually doing. So assessing it per maturity models is the plan. And it was actually inspired by my CEO role when we did that in London, when I attended some course on London Stock Exchange. Not that we would be going IPO, but it was just for education purposes. And the first, not really, no IPO, no. But what happened is that they did assessment of the company through maturity models, and the categories were whatever, your innovation, your finance, your HR, your budgeting, whatever. So you had categories like that, and they put us really, and in each category they had pretty good assessment, and they built up a maturity model for the company, and they compared us among each other in the group, and in a group of 1,000 companies. And it was super eye-opening, because the way how I define senior, or actually the way how I define junior person or junior company or whatever, is that you don't know what you don't know. Senior people are those who know what they don't know. But okay, I mixed it up a little bit. The challenge with junior people is that they think they know everything. And it is extremely hard to explain them, you know what, actually not. And they take it extremely personally. And the same thing is with company. If someone would telling me that we're actually losers, then I would say me? I mean, this company, seriously? But then you go through that and then you see, okay, our maturity was 3.5 out of 5. So we were somehow in the middle, a little bit better than middle, right? So I thought we were building this company for 20 years. I would think we're at least 4.2. But the point is that instead of being upset about the result, you actually perfectly understand what you're not doing and what you should be doing. And that assessment, it was like a course for like 1 year. But this one assessment that took a week, 2 days, that was the most important thing I've learned there. So that's how I came up with maturity models, and then we did that as part of our exercise on some roles in R&D, and that was what took me to this inspiration. So what we want to do really, or what the vision is, how you show junior people what they need to improve, how you convince them that they are not the best developers they think they are, without touching their ego.
That's hard.
Yeah.
You will always touch the ego of the engineer.
No,
You will tell him that,
no,
come on, you are
they
not
will figure
that
it out.
good.
You do self-assessment,
Yeah.
and most people will read it and they will say like, I should rethink this. And it didn't, I think I have pretty big ego, and it didn't touch my ego, the assessment. And I actually thought like, yeah, you're right. We're not doing this. We should be doing this. And it was inspirational in a way when I understood our next level is, these are the things we need to do. But even on that next level, I already knew that there is 1 or 2 more levels.
Yeah.
And I said like, okay, that's too much. We start here and we do this incremental improvement. And I think that could work for developers as well. So again, it's a theory. That's what we want to do. When I'm building up this model is not a simple task, and with all the reorganizations we're coming through, it's just the next step where we want to take the engineering.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I like that idea of evaluation of the level of the engineer. That's something we are trying to do during the hiring process, because there are these crazy rumors of companies here in Brno who just did that mistake, that they had great people in the company and then they started to hire these new people, probably with a lower level of capabilities, maybe talent or skills, and they pay them higher than actually great talents they had within the company. And you really don't want to do that mistake, because I believe that that's one thing that can really make people mad about the company, that you don't value their value for the company. So we're trying to always evaluate what will be the value of the candidate for the company, what he will bring, how if he can teach us something new or bring some new technologies or the knowledge we don't have within the company. These all aspects are important. Is he strive to learn more and be better? These are all the important aspects. And then it really doesn't matter if the person, is with company for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years. But if these people are on the same level, then I believe that they should have the same salary, because also that person who is with company for 5, 6 years, he will be really glad to work with that new person, because he can learn something from him, enrich his experience. So yeah. Also, for us, it's really important to retain some level of competitiveness on the market for the talented people, for the senior people, just to ensure that they will stay with the company, because they are really important for us. So we are doing this regular task to figuring out what's the current level or value of these people on the market, to figure out how their salary should look.
We actually implemented just recently similar model that you just described. We defined the job families. For each job family, we had certain levels, 1 to 10. And for each level, we were basically assigning competencies from what we call the skills matrix. So you have engineering skills, leadership skills, people skills, and then for each level you have various level of certain skills that you need to be able to demonstrate. Also, we define clear rules. If you want to take a next step, what you need to do, you need to be able to demonstrate the skills at the next level for the last 6 months and stuff like that. But what I wanted to offer you is another view that Netflix actually took on this on this compensation question, and it's basically it's always about the market. So once a year they review the salary for all their disciplines, senior software engineer or senior Python engineer or architect and stuff like that. They will, because they really want only the best. That's written in their culture. They only want the top A players. And they have very fast process. If somebody is not performing, there is no performance improvement plan. You're gone. Like the very moment with the nice nice package. But this once a year, they will do the market survey in Silicon Valley. So for the senior software engineers, let's say the average is $500,000 US. They will always at their 10 or 15% above that, and that's your new salary. As long as you are in the company and you have no performance issues, meaning you are not fired, you are getting top of the market. And if you come to your manager and say, okay, I got this offer from Facebook, it's 100K more, it's a managerial test. You are thinking, okay, do I want to keep this employee or not? If I want to keep this employee and he's contributing and the offer is real, I'm going to pay him this money. And that's fixed at Netflix, and that's how they retain basically the top talent. So they are making sure that nobody is even ever thinking about leaving for a better package, because they know they have the top employees, of course they can afford them, and the money is never the question. And they are never overpaying, because the market needs to demonstrate based on their survey or from the offer the employee brought in that this person is worth that much money.
We were doing this analysis on Brno market, or we're doing it obviously every year. And when you look at the spread of the salaries and the statistical distribution between, let's say, median, then your 7th decile and 10th decile, you actually see that the salaries on these levels are like extremely different. And we were thinking like, should we be on the top? Should we be, how do we set our remuneration? Should we be at 10 out of 10? And we had an idea for a moment that, yeah, we can afford it, let's do it. But the discussion went in a direction where we said, well, but then we are risking that people will be coming here to work only for money. Because the difference between, let's say, 7th decile and 10 here in Brno, it's huge. Then we were just afraid that people would be working and coming here only for money, and that's what we discussed earlier, that that's what we don't want. So we actually said, no, we need to be like maybe 7, 8, something like that. But our conscious decision was, whether it was right or wrong, I think our people would think it was wrong, not to be on the top.
Yeah. I guess you're right, and it needs to be the whole framework around it. You cannot introduce this policy without introducing proper performance management. You are not going to pay B players the top of the market plus 10% on top of that, right? But if you have only the A players and they are really contributing, it's coming back to our earlier point. The job is getting done in amazing pace. And of course, Netflix has the whole story about the stunning colleagues and stuff like that. So they are really focusing on the whole thing, but the compensation piece is really focusing top of the market, add them a little bit more, and let's just keep them. Because, I mean, on one hand, they can afford it, and they are benefiting from it.
Yeah. You also, some part of this is that if you have these really talented people, they will definitely attract more people. And you need less of these, because even in a smaller number, they will do more. Because
so our experience is opposite. If you have a team that is full of senior people, they are very opinionated, and it's actually counterproductive.
It depends.
So finding out, our experience is finding out the right mixture is the key.
It depends. We have some people with these, let's say, small character flaws, maybe. And they are really awesome when they are working on their own, alone, and they are really productive, and they can do unimaginable. But if you put them into certain teams to work together with them, there is just a small tension.
Into society.
Yeah.
So talking about these small character flaws, I'm very open CEO. I'm very open to all the ideas. So I have this big title in my office, right? You enter my office and you see this big inscription on the wall saying like this office is very open to exchanging the all ideas. You enter with your ideas and you're leaving with mine.
Yeah.
I would just maybe add to one point that you mentioned that the really senior people, they are very opinionated and it's hard for them to work together. That was also part of it. At Netflix, they would not consider these people as the top people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They were good and competent, but they were not good. They were basically looking for the unicorns in the market and were cherry picking everything.
Gentlemen, sorry, just we're a little bit pushed for time. I'd just like to ask one question of my own before we finish, if that's all right. You know, during lockdown, were you able to keep your finger on the pulse in terms of the needs of your employees? And if so, how?
I can maybe quickly start. At kiwi.com, we actually started 2 weeks into the quarantine pulse survey, where we designed key questions that were directly related to the key indicators or key signals we wanted to learn about the company, which was context awareness about the business strategy, what we are doing, to basically measure that people understand what we are doing, why we are doing it. We were measuring the perceived productivity. So basically we ask you, do you feel you are productive? And then we ask, do you get all the support that's needed? And it gave us really great results. And those results were actually much higher than before the crisis.
Yeah, we approach it in a little bit different way. We introduce some, whole company meeting. We call it KAMA, Kentico Ask Me Anything session. And there was a whole executive team and anybody from a company, and people can ask their questions using Slido. And we answered all of them. So we were trying, to figure out if there are any issues. Then on a management level, we had these regular discussions on a weekly level when we were looking on our productivity, and we often discussed these during the one-on-ones and when we were meeting with people during these tools, either Microsoft Teams or different tools for that telco. I believe that we asked our people during that shared time how they are performing, if there are any issues, what's their situation in their family, because it's also important, to know when you can see a person who is really tired, 2 or 3 small kids running around, and you see that he probably had a really bad night the day before. So it's great to also know how people are doing. And according to this, we did some small tweaks. Basically, we shut down the whole Czech office and the other offices. But during that pandemic situation, at some point, we decided that we will open it for a small number of people who were really scared from their work conditions at home. So we decided to open the office so they can work from that and be probably more productive and happy about what they did. So yeah.
In our case, first of all, it starts with HR, right? So having great HR that's running all pulse surveys and things like that, I think that's been happening as well. I had, and I still have, regular communication with employees and very open communication. So telling them how we are doing, how bad it is, and but also telling them, hey, look, how much reserves we have, how long can we survive under current circumstances, and what do we need to do. So having very open communication that doesn't say everything is like green, but not saying everything is like totally bad, but really telling them what is the reality. And I think that this regular open communication helped a lot in sort of, making it easier for the people that they understand. I mean, the biggest fear is the fear of uncertainty, right? And when you tell them the good and the bad, they feel we can trust this. And normally on our QBR sessions, I have like 150 people connecting, and on these events, it was like 250, 300 people online, and it's recorded, so people look at it later. But we really had online meetings with 300 employees connecting. So I think that helped. And the last thing was, it started just, you know, as a just a little bit of help for my friends here in one hospital. We started to print face masks, 3D print face masks, and then we had more demand. So we said, okay, let's build a group of people, and they kind of came up with ordering website, and then we built an ordering team and completion team, and then a lot of volunteers were coming over the weekends, and we printed day and night, and they were coming to the office. And by the way, we distributed free of charge 42,000 face masks. So something that started with like, can you print 3 or 4 face shields, ended up with 42,000. And I think that was also very important because the mood, the spirit in the company, and then we run this globally. So, okay, we produce that in the Czech Republic, but, you know, we send 500 to our employees in the UK for their local communities, or 1,000 to US or to Australia. And so everyone was, you know, involved. And then on our team's channel, they were sharing pictures, how they are handing over, you know, and the doctors and the happy faces of the doctors that they eventually got some protective equipment, and how many people participated in distribution, in production, in everything. That was, it was not the intention, but I was surprised how well it turned out, you know, for how much the employees really appreciated that. So yeah,
Human aspect.
Yeah, a little bit of CSR and great marketing impact. Didn't expect that.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for the last couple of hours. I think I could certainly speak for myself. I've very much enjoyed listening to your deliberations and pieces of knowledge. And I understand you're going to stay around for a little while and mingle with the audience. And perhaps if any questions that haven't been raised, the lads will raise them. David, Zbyšek, and Václav, thank you so much.